Hey everyone, I want to talk today about a question I've been getting a lot of lately, and this is from one of the schools I work with. The teachers, have really been pushed hard from remote learning to hybrid, to having demands from parents, from having to redo curriculum to getting stuff online. So really, she was saying, hey, Kyle, my teachers have been stretched thin, and I just don't know right now, project-based learning, if that's something that's really on the top of mind for them. And I pushed back a little bit and I said, I think we can be creative about this approach, because really, if we believe that project-based learning is going to help us better reach our vision, and most schools have a very similar vision. Most schools want independent, they want engagement, right? They probably want students to be problem solvers in the community. So I'm going to put that there, problem solvers. So it's not a question really that schools and the schools I work with don't have that vision, because they do. The problem is really, how do we get there? And when's the right time? Because right now our current reality is certainly not this. Students aren't independent, engaged problem solvers. They might be independent because they're working at home, but they're not so fully engaged. I've talked to another school that has attendance rates that's been down 50% from what it was before the whole pandemic. And it's not just because kids are afraid to come to school, it's that they're not engaged. So we can clearly identify that there's a gap, right? And I'm gonna call this the gap. Okay, there's a gap between what our current reality is and what we envision student learning to look like. So it's not a problem that we don't have a crystal clear vision, because we do. It's that, how do we bridge that gap? Now, I've seen leaders try to do this. They try to bridge that gap in one big step. They bring in project-based learning. They say project-based learning is going to be the mecca. It's going to save us. And the problem is really that they don't really have the systems, the structures, in place to support that. So what they do is they try to fill that gap in one step. They say, we're moving this direction. All our units are going to be project-based. And really typically what that's going to do is it's going to create 3 different types of pockets of people. And I call these pockets of people 3 C's. Okay? Now, your top C's, these are the ones they love change, they've got an appetite for it, they're always changing, they can't even have their classroom stay the same from one unit to the next. Those are your champions, okay? Your champions are going to do whatever, wherever the new vision, they're going to go that way. And that's a very small amount. You're going to have some who are cheerleaders. Those cheerleaders are going to cheer the champions on. They're going to maybe wait to really dive in the deep end of the pool and say, let's see how this goes first. They're not going to be too critical, but they aren't going to dive in immediately to whatever this vision is with project-based learning. Now, you're going to have even lower, and a good voice is the critics. The critics are going to be against anything that goes, why fix something if it's not broken? We've got enough on our plates. They're the ones who are really going to curtail this. However, they're very, very important to have. You have all those people, and not one is worse or better than the other. They're all necessary. But what you're really going to want to do is get enough critical mass going for project-based learning so that that just becomes the way in which your ship is being steered towards independent, engaged problem solvers. So the first way to do it is to try to bridge that gap right away and say we're all going to project-based learning. What that's going to do is your champions are going to go that direction, but they are going to be innovating and nobody's going to take notice. It's going to create resentment against these other folks who aren't innovating. That's not what you want to do. I've done it before and it's not pretty. Okay? So here's what I told that particular leader to do. And I'm going to give you a case study to illustrate this. So let me turn this around. And the better approach is moving to project-based learning together. Here's our vision. We have that intact. We got to make sure everyone's on board with that. Let's say they are. And here's our current reality. Okay, we've got to honor where we're at if we're going to even begin to start talking about where we want to go. And so, case in point, there's this wonderful school. They just received a Blue Ribbon Award, one of the only low-income districts in the entire nation to receive this award. They've got, meanwhile, competition of these high affluent districts, and somehow they managed to get this Blue Ribbon Award. So you know this school is doing great things. And the leader wants to keep pushing them and knows that project-based learning is a great way forward. And some teachers are doing some pretty cool things with remote learning in the hybrid space. So what I say to them is, you know, instead of trying to cross that whole gap, how have you celebrated? What have you done to celebrate what your teachers have done? Because teachers work so hard, and if they just got a little bit of recognition, they'll go with you anywhere. So the first step for you to do as a leader, if you're in this position, is you need to celebrate, okay? And you know what? That starts with a C too. So I'm gonna write this, celebrate, okay? So I'm gonna give my crude drawings, because you know I'm not an illustrator, but celebrate what they've done. And so what this leader did is she brought the whole staff together and she said, look, it's Professional Development Day. Already people's heads, they're bored, they're tuned out, they're checked out, they're thinking about their class. Hey, let's celebrate. And she honored 3 to 4 teachers who are doing some really incredible hybrid projects. Students are in the community somehow. They're doing things collaboratively in the digital space. She celebrated that and highlighted those teachers. Those teachers felt good and the staff was like, well, what are they doing? I'm interested in that. So she celebrated. And then the celebration moved into step 2, which is connection, okay? It's very important. PBL, project-based learning, might be foreign to your school. If it's something your teachers haven't been talking a lot about, you've got to bridge that connection with something they're already into. So celebrate a very positive hybrid learning experience, and then ask the teachers to identify, well, what were some of those things that made that hybrid experience so great? So they started identifying those things. It was student-led. There was a challenging problem or question. There was student choice. There was student voice. They presented their work. The parents came in. These are all components of high-quality project-based learning. So you make that connection and say, okay, here's the list of those components that made this such a great experience. You list those things out. And everybody's on board. And they might be wondering, well, where's she going with this? Well, then the principal is very, very, very clever. She knew that the very next month, and this is in February, coming up, is Black History Month. And typically during Black History Month, they had an event where they brought the whole community in and they had an exhibition where they're able to highlight different contributions that African Americans had made to the great nation. And you know, this is something that's already happened, but they were wondering, well, how do we do that in a virtual environment? And so she made the celebration first with what's going well, made the connection to what are the great things about that experience that was project-based, and now you make the connection to the very next step is community, okay? So now you've got some kind of community event because you want to move to PBL together. Black History Month is coming up in February, okay? So I'll write this here, it's Black History Month. And she came up with a very, very clever idea. To make it not seem like it was too far, she said, hey, how might we do this online? We're racking our brains as a leadership team. How might we still celebrate Black History Month and have a big event, but still make it online? And they came up with this concept of living museums. And living museums are a wonderful way of, if people who are passed away, unfortunately, could come back to life, what might they say? How might we celebrate them? So this big project that they're going to go to in February, it's connected to something they already care about. They've already done something for Black History Month. It's connected to those very things that they're celebrating, and it's also connected to project-based learning and where they want to go. Now the staff is going to be super excited because they're going to connect to Black History Month. Every different team is going to develop a different part of this living museum. They're going to have biographies, they're going to have speeches, they're going to have poetry, they're going to have music. Everyone gets on board, it's the whole school, and they all feel like they're moving together as a community. And guess what? When the principal mentions project-based learning again, they associate it all with great things. And so now, instead of just our champions joining in this direction, we've got also our cheerleaders and even our critics. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it inspired you. I will share also in the show notes just an example of a quick transcript of how to do that in your setting. And I hope it's proved to be helpful for you.